Yesterday we played tape of a Republican congressman joking about lynching Democratic members of Congress. Now it's conservative national radio hosts calling the president Hitler, and conservative national television hosts joking about assassinating the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Right-wing media deliberately and systematically invoking both Nazism and political assassination. Hostile crowds consistently displaying Nazi symbolism at these demonstrations. The corporate-funded anti-reform movement using Hitler as a rhetorical weapon against the president and against Democrats in Congress. It's scary, of course, if they don't understand the implications of their actions. And it's much, much scarier still if they do. Do you think that calling the president a Nazi, calling the president Hitler, is an implicit call for politically motivated violence?
Yes, I do. In fact, what's really being said here is two messages. There's the message to the predominantly white, middle-aged crowds of people screaming at these meetings, trying to shut them down. But there's also a coded message to what I would call the Looney Tunes, the Fruit Loops on the side. It's really like playing Russian roulette. You put a cartridge in the chamber, you spin, and once in a while it goes off. And we saw that happen with Dr. Tiller. We've seen it happen numerous times in this country with the violence against political leaders, whether it's Martin Luther King or whoever it might be. We have a history of being a well-armed, violent country. And so really, I think that these calls are incredibly irresponsible. The good news is that it shows a desperation. The far right knows they have lost. They've lost the hearts and minds of most American people, for instance, who want health care. But they also know that they have a large group of people who are not well informed, who listen to only their own sources, and these people can be energized to go out and do really dreadful things. I'm afraid we're going to see it with some of our political leaders, and the Glenn Becks of this world literally are responsible for unleashing what I regard as an anti-democratic, anti-American movement in this country that is trying to shut down legitimate debate and replace it with straight-out intimidation. And it is ironic that they're drawing a parallel to Hitler. I wouldn't draw such a parallel, but I would draw a parallel to the brown shirts of the 1930s who got into a habit of shutting down dissent and making it look as if they had a majority by spreading out in groups, just as these folks do, screaming the loudest and making debate impossible. So these are very, very bad signs, and I'm not at all optimistic about how this is going to end in terms of violence, although I do think Obama is going to win the day in terms of most Americans. The problem is we're not talking about most Americans. We're talking about a small, angry group of white people who, you know, paraphrase Bart Simpson, the election broke their brains. They're angry, and they are ready to do just about anything to stop the process at this point because they'd rather see us all lose than admit defeat.
Mr.
That's
Schaefer,
where they're at.
One of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you about this tonight is because what you describe as the potential that this could be a coded message. What we're seeing here is vituperative language like this from some people who are considered to be relatively mainstream within conservative politics, but we're also seeing it from movement organizers, from people who are organized, like this Americans for Prosperity group. What I'm trying to get down to is the question of whether or not this is a deliberate coded message, whether this is sort of a dog whistle that's going out on the right. By using specific language about Nazism, it is a specific call for violence.
Yeah, I would like to just say this, and I know this may come off as a little harsh to people, but I honestly think that there is a type of white, middle-aged American male who has had a kind of a mental collapse. Misinformed, right-wing white people, not terribly bright people. There is a coded message here, and their coded message to their own lunatic fringe is very simple, and that is go for broke. When you start comparing a democratically elected president who is not only our first black president, but a moderate progressive to Adolf Hitler, you have arrived at a point where you are literally leaving a loaded gun on the table, saying the first person who wants to come along and use this, go ahead, be our guest. Now, all these people, when something bad happens, will raise their holy hands in horror, said, of course we didn't mean that, we were just talking about being Americans, it's American to protest. BS. They know exactly what's out there. Now we've crossed a line into which hate and vitriol have gone to a point where it is anti-democratic and anti-American. These people do not want America to succeed. They would rather see our system go down than have a president, someone with different political views. And we have arrived at a point where enough is enough. So these people are hate mongers, leaving a loaded gun on the table. They're calling our president Hitler. They're spreading this rhetoric. They're spreading these lies. it isn't just a question of being bad journalists anymore. These are bad Americans, and they're putting all of us at risk.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, Mr. Schaefer. We really appreciate your insight.